everyone. Good morning if you are in the West Coast or on the East Coast of the United States, or good evening if you are in Europe, or good night if you are in Asia. Here we are for the second day of the XR Safety Week, day 2 dedicated to child safety, child mental health, and in general all the aspects that are pertaining the youngest generations. And so it's my pleasure to start this day with a very appreciable guest. We are talking about Lucia Pannese. She's the CEO and founder of Imaginary, and I don't want to tell too much about what you do. I could say that you are one of the leaders in production of serious games, but this would open another chapter, which is the definition of serious games. So please, Lucia, I don't want to tell too much, and I leave the stage to you. So have a great keynote. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Marco. That's very kind of you. So yes, I will quickly introduce who I am, but let me just share my screen and we do that properly. So thank you for inviting me to this fantastic conference. And we decided that I should give a little bit of insight into immersive digital therapeutics and children's safety. So who I am and who we are. Yes, I am the CEO of and founder of Imaginary, a company based in Italy. We are experienced in serious games and in gamification. And since 18 years, we do that, combining game psychology and mechanics into processes and projects where mainly we work on behavioral change. And the way we do this is with a multidisciplinary team. And normally we start our projects and studies with EU-funded research. And I will take up the concepts during this short speech. So what are games and gamification? Serious games are, in our case, digital interactive games that have a serious purpose. So it's nothing to do with entertainment. It's a game that we play if we have to educate people to change behaviors, to take care of someone, emergency management, and so on. And it is really a game with a storytelling, with an objective, and so on. While gamification does not mean using games, like very many people think and do. It's the application of elements typical of a game, like surprise, hazards, or yes, also scores and prizes, and so on, into processes that have nothing to do with entertainment. Like, for example, your fidelity card is one of the oldest and easiest examples of gamification. So gamification is meant at behavioral change. But here we talk about child safety. So I will bring the two topics together because we're specialists in games. So what do we mean with child safety? You will imagine that very many people would start talking about privacy, security. GDPR is something that is typically European, but again, it means a lot of paper stuff and bureaucracy. But actually, I do not want to talk about these things. People would hate me for that. Some will, shake their heads. But what I want to talk about is something very different. It is something having to do with the design mainly of a solution, which in my opinion needs to be designed for children, keeping safety of children in mind, but at design phase. So we could say safety by design, which could be a buzzword in the meantime. The other aspect that I would like to talk about is the safety of how to use a digital solution for children in order to keep them safe. So it's a sort of how to produce it and how to embed it into a process, into a procedure. So what we do normally is to train people or work on rehabilitation of people, supporting people living with a pathology, for example, raising awareness of something, or supporting adherence, or anyway, working on, in general, behavioral change processes. So here we have objectives which are very serious. And in order to be able to reach these objectives, we have to know the target very well, because this objective can be reached only working on motivation of the target group and engagement. And you know, motivation is something almost personal, I would say. So everybody would say, yes, children and adults are motivated in a different way. Yes, of course, but not only. Even the same group of people is motivated in a different way if they're working or if they're in their spare time, if they're healthy people or if they have impairments and so on. So if we want to engage them, we have to know our targets very, very well. I am a mathematician, and of course, Albert Einstein is one of the people I admire most. And he said, if he had an hour to solve a problem and his life depended on it, he would use the first 55 minutes determining the proper questions to ask. And this is absolutely fundamental at design phase of a digital solution, in my opinion. So how do we design a solution, in this case for children, but anyway, the methodology is then the same. We need, of course, to study something with subject matter experts, because mainly we work on health. So of course you need medical specialists, because you need to keep scientifically sound solutions. But of course is my personal opinion, you need to design the solutions together with the target users as well. So you have to work on finding out, exploring needs, expectations of these people, what they accept, what they would like to have, what are their fears, what is motivating these people, so that they find an environment which they feel is meant for them. And to do this, and I will give you a lot of examples for this, you have to work with a multidisciplinary team. So the team that I have put together in my own company is made of psychologists, of training experts, of game designers, of very many different kinds of technologies, mathematicians, okay, and graphical artists. And they work together in a seamless continuum with the target users, with the experts, to produce a digital solution. So there are games that we have produced that have an intrinsic concept of safety in them. For example, this one is a procedural game about the neonatal resuscitation procedure in a hospital, which is something on which a baby's life is depending. So if the team is very quick, because you have a couple of minutes normally, because in this case, the baby is brought to the operation theater in a very critical condition. So if you're well-trained and very quick and know exactly what to do, and in sync with your other colleagues, nurses, the doctor, and so on, then you save the baby's life. So here, safety is quite easy to understand. So this is, anyway, a procedural training. I would like to focus my attention here this evening, sorry, I'm in Europe, this morning with you, you're probably in California, with some examples that we have been working on, which come from European funded research. So what I was telling you before. So let's start with the first example. The first game that I would like to introduce to you is to support children with cystic fibrosis. It's a very bad pathology. I hope you don't even know what it is. You cannot save them, but you can keep them safer, avoiding a lot of mistakes that they could do in terms of nutrition mainly, but also of movement and of habits during their daily life. So we have put together an educational game that trains these children about many aspects of nutrition. And we have divided the content into age groups as well as into geographical areas, because not in all, even the European countries, you have the same kind of typical food. So you have different alimentary habits. It's meant for individual use for the, the second age group, and together with the parents, one of the parents for the youngest children. But let me show you with a video how the game looks like and what we have put together here. So the child has to take care of this little puppet. That little monster is the avatar, and the avatar has actually the same issues, the same problem as the child, him or herself. And this idea of having to take care of another being with the same issues, trains the child to pay attention on different issues. We have what we call mini games, like these ones about fat, nutrition, and so on, or these ones with the frogs, specifically only about fats, which are mini educational units, I could call them, where the child learns a specific content in a way that is friendly enough for the child's age. When they do the learning part in a good way, we have introduced a gamification element, which we will see in a moment, which is a reward for the learning in terms of gadgets for the puppet. So you can change the color or give him a hat and so on. So it's a mixture of the daily life. So here comes the gamification part where you can put a different hat on the monster and so on. So it's a mixture of gamification, of a game, of learning units, and of the daily life of this little monster who is coping with nutrition, movement, and so on, same way as the child. Then the second example that I brought is for teenagers. So we grow a little bit in age here, and it's called Zombies Attack, and it's about fighting obesity. Some partners in our project, when we started this, were criticizing us, saying, fantastic, we want to fight obesity, which is dangerous for children, and you keep them sitting on a chair in front of a PC. So you will see that there are other aspects of safety. Not only some people are afraid of addiction, for example, if a game is nice, it's funny, it's rewarding, and so on. We have broken the addiction here, and we have taken care of the child's safety in terms of understanding of behavioral change towards a healthier nutrition with this game. So when you play the game, during the day, there's a game night life cycle in the game. You have to scan the people that you meet and find out what they have eaten. Here again, there are mini games, which are, of course, much more difficult than the ones you saw before, because it's teenagers, where you have to play. And again, there's a gamification concept, which is rewarding your learning in terms of weapons. Weapons you need at night when you need to defend yourself against zombies. You see, sometimes there's a sort of bar, this yellow bar popping up here again in the upper left corner of the screen. That's an energy bar. The energy you are using playing the game. So the energy gets lower. And the teenager playing the game has to wear a bracelet, which is a wearable sensor, which has to be, which is loading the game, so loading the energy bar in the game, while the teenager is moving in the real life. So he's or he or she is riding a bike, or he is walking, playing basket with the friends, and so on. And in that way, the sensor is filling in the energy bar. So this is a so-called pervasive game where real and virtual life are really mixed for the best outcome possible. So you cannot play if you don't move during the day, in other words. This is yet another example for children with autism. Those who know the topic know that autistic children have some problems in the area of social interaction. So they need to improve their social skills. So the game that we have put together with them is a game that plays in this space shuttle. And the space shuttle is flying through different planets. On every planet, there's a different topic which is being explored and well, interacted with. Again, here there are some interactions in the game, as well as some mini games which work on specific learning units with the same logic that you have seen in the two games before. And we have both single user mini games as well as multi-user mini games. One of the interesting things when I said about safety before, that I'm also interested in how the game is being used to support safety, is that this game has a dashboard behind the lines, which is used by a facilitator, by a trainer, by a teacher, by someone who is planning the training of every single child. So in other words, the reason why we have different planets is that for every child, there is an individual learning path, which is being put together by the coach, by the trainer. So every child is meeting or has to interact with those situations which are more meaningful for him or her and in the right level of difficulty. So in a way, there is this sort of protection against something that might be too difficult, and too difficult means then frustrating, because in a game, we always need to motivate users, as I said before. So the idea is not only to give them a proper content in general, which is studied for them, but which is even individualized to the single learner. Last example that I brought here is our suite of games, which are meant for rehabilitation and specifically for telerehabilitation. So this is a system that is becoming very interesting nowadays, of course, with the COVID pandemic and so on, where everybody starts understanding that you have to keep patients as far as possible at home and out of hospitals in general. So it's a system which we have studied with two actually European projects and then engineered into a product in this case, which is scalable and which again allows for highly personalized therapy plans. So the same as we saw with the training of autistic children before, where you have individualized learning paths, here you have individualized therapy plans. Again, it was created together with patients because you want to motivate them to adhere to a therapy. It is really proven to boost motivation. We have motivational indexes of over 90%. And you can enrich data collection because you can trace everything that a patient is doing in front of the games. So apart from keeping the efficacy of traditional therapy, it is also much more motivating than traditional therapy, because traditional therapy, remember, is also something that is boring. You maybe don't see any improvement, while with the game, with the scores, it's easier to find out if you're getting better. So it's motivating in different meanings. For example, if you play a game, sometimes you forget, and this is reported by therapists, you forget that you are in pain and that you are getting tired. And that's also, in my opinion, an issue of security, because if you are preserved against these negative feelings, then it's easier to keep you in the program and to try and well, get better, or well, in some cases actually slow down some deterioration, which is irreversible. This solution is interesting because the neurology version has different prices, so has won different prizes, both by the therapists, by the scientific specialists of this area, but also by the digital giants of the healthcare market, as well as by the public administration under topics like reorganization of the NHS. So let me show you how this works. You won't see children in the video, but there's a children version anyway. So this is a neurology clinic in Milano, and this is a real patient, unfortunately for him, playing some of the games. So he's moving in the free space in front of an RGBD camera, and this camera is reading the patient's skeleton. So the joints are actually being traced by the camera, and the movement in the space by the patient can be translated into interaction with the games that we're seeing, with the upper limbs, the lower limbs, the trunk, with exercises like sitting up and standing, sitting down and standing, of course. We have cognitive games as well, although the cognitive side is always included also in motor games, but there are some where this part is more relevant. We are creating content for different pathology types because, as I said, motivation changes. So we want the content to be addressing specific patients, also because these solutions need to be certified as a medical device. There is a rich reporting area, which is showing both the progress of the therapy as well as the single session with a lot of details. And actually, even elderly people are really, really motivated to using this kind of solution. We have a lot of scientific publications because all the work that we do is going through scientific, validations, data collection, and scientific publications. And these are some graphical examples of the children version. So what you saw before was the neurology version, which is more dedicated to elderly people between 60 and 95 typically. And these are some examples for you of how the games look like for children. These games are being used normally or at present for children coming from the area of ADHD and so hyperactivity, attention disorders, and these kind of issues. We don't see very many differences, actually, if you're curious about this, between boys and girls. Actually, it's some types of games which are quite interesting for both genders. So these are the examples that I wanted to show you, where, in my opinion, there are really different aspects and different perspectives on the safety topic. So how to design involving the user for the user's safety and interest and motivation. So in order also to reach the objective, and how to embed in different contexts and in different ways the concept of safety into a process. So sometimes it is mixing real life with virtual life. Sometimes it can be to give some dashboard in the hands of a specialist, so that a pathway, which is, it doesn't really matter, a training pathway or a rehabilitation pathway or whatever, is really being individualized for the maximum benefit of the individual user. And there is the possibility of checking the user and monitoring the process of the way towards our objectives. This would be the way how I would put it. This is what I wanted to show you, and actually I would very much like to stop here, and I would be interested to discuss a bit with you and to take your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. And so we have more or less 5 minutes before moving to the next event. So you are absolutely invited to drop your questions here in the chat or request me to open your mic. It's up to you. But in the meantime, Lucia, I have 2 questions for you, actually.
Yes, of course.
So the first one is, okay, we are talking about projects that are quite specialistic, or they are financed by European grants or medical and so on. But what's the, how could I say, market uptake of this kind of products?
Yes, that's a very interesting question, Marco. Thank you. Actually, yes, these projects were funded by the EU at the beginning, at least, because there's a lot of research behind. So it's something that takes maybe 3 to 4 years to develop, and very often it's one component of something bigger. The market uptake is actually, I think, starting now, because although evaluations are always super good, both by the specialists and by the users, actually it's not easy to put these kinds of solutions. Now, I don't want to use the term digital therapeutic versus educational game or whatever. It's that depends, of course. But it's very difficult to put them on the market because of organizational issues. In other terms, very often the first question is who pays for that? So the NHS systems, of course, the way that therapy is funded depends on the different countries. Some have a public NHS system base, some others work rather with insurances and so on. Anyway, these people are not there yet. And for example, NHS systems are starting now with COVID to struggle to find out how to pay for these solutions, even the telerehabilitation one. That's brand new stuff, but also the other ones. It's not clear who needs to pay. And of course, you don't want to put the whole burden on the backs of families and patients. So this is one of the issues. Another one is that the whole regulations are even changing now. So new bits and pieces are coming up, and that's quite heavy also on the producer side to keep up with bureaucracy and procedures for security, for privacy, for data protection, and so on. So you need really to put together some new efforts and sometimes new staff to show that you comply with all that is needed. Yes, and then there's a third thing, which is specialists often do not know how to work with digital technology. So it's an issue of education and of organization. For example, if you think of telerehabilitation, there is no hospital that has a policy or working procedures in place how to work with patients who are not there. And this seems to be an easy problem, but it is not. So they have really to put some new organization in place. So these things take time. And these things are the reason, in my opinion, why the uptake was very, very slow and very, very reduced at the moment still.
But I would add to what you said that things are moving. So I'd like to close with you on this positive note, because some years ago, it was 2015, I started collaborating with an NGO in Lebanon and Syria, and we used to work with children with disability, especially in the context of Syria and mothers without husbands. So it was a very extreme situation. And one of the issues there was the cost of assistive technologies, such as the buttons for the persons with disability to interact with computers. So we started developing a technology that responds to every kind of electric impulse, such as, for instance, graffiti. So you can use your pencil and interact, touching the pencil, touching the graffiti with the computer, and so on. So what I would say is, are we going towards a direction where software can be the blocking reason for, but not hardware anymore?
I don't
more
think
convenient,
so.
more okay.
No, I don't think so, because if it's well designed, then software is not blocking anything, I would say. It needs to be designed, as I said, by a multidisciplinary team and involving end users. But I think that everything is getting there. So on a cultural level, we are changing a lot of things. Of course, we need a bit of time to put every detail in place, but also trainings for specialists are being organized, and politicians are sitting and producing new norms and regulations. So there are lots of experiments and pilot projects going on, which I think is very promising. So I don't think that software will be blocking. Software would be blocking if it wasn't well designed. So people would say, what is this thing? I don't want to interact with that. And that would, in a way, ruin the reputation of digital solutions. But I don't even think that is happening.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Lucia. It's been a real pleasure to have you here today with us. Clearly, for anyone who wants to interact with Lucia, please contact us. We can open different avenues, and we need to jump in the next event. What is the next event? Well, go on xrsafetyweek.org. In the agenda section, you will find the Safeguarding Your Children's Mental Health within the Metaverse with MIQ, Metaverse Intelligence Quotient. We will have Shay Richburg in Altspace VR. And for now, Lucia, thank you again for your time.
Have a fabulous event, and thank you very much. Bye.
See you soon.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.